A Chinese company just shipped a phone with satellite calling. Not emergency-only satellite calling like the iPhone 14. Full two-way text messaging to any satellite-connected device on Earth. No cell tower required. Apple spent 3 years and billions building a limited version. Huawei did the full thing first. And here's the part that makes no sense. The United States government tried to kill this company. They cut Huawei off from every American chip, every piece of software, every supplier. The goal was extinction. Instead, Huawei came back with technology Apple still doesn't have. If you want to see how sanctions backfire, hit like and subscribe. This story only gets wilder. The Mate 60 Pro hit stores in August 2023 with zero warning. No press event, no leak cycle, no advance reviews. One day it wasn't there. The next day it was. And every tech analyst who said Huawei was finished suddenly had to explain how a company with no access to advanced chips just built a phone with a 7-nanometer processor. That's the same node Apple uses in the iPhone 14. The same node the US said China couldn't make. The phone sold out in 6 minutes. Within a week, the Chinese government banned iPhones from all official buildings. Huawei's return wasn't just a product launch. It was a declaration. To understand what just happened, you have to go back to May 2019. That's when the US Commerce Department added Huawei to something called the Entity List. It's a blacklist. If you're on it, American companies can't sell you anything without government approval. And the government wasn't approving. Overnight, Huawei lost access to Google, Qualcomm, Intel, and every chip designer that used American technology, which is almost all of them. The world's second-largest smartphone maker, bigger than Apple in global shipments at the time, suddenly couldn't buy the components it needed to build phones. The strategy was suffocation. Huawei's smartphones ran on chips from Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, TSMC. TSMC uses American design tools, so the US told TSMC, you can't make chips for Huawei anymore. Huawei's phones ran Android. Android is American, so Google pulled the license. Huawei tried to stockpile parts, buying up everything it could before the deadline. It wasn't enough. By late 2020, Huawei's smartphone sales collapsed. The company that once shipped more phones than Samsung dropped out of the global top 5. Western analysts declared victory. Huawei was done. Except Huawei wasn't trying to survive. It was preparing to rebuild from zero. Ren Zhengfei founded Huawei in 1987 with $3,000 and 6 employees in a small apartment in Shenzhen. He was 43, a former military engineer who got laid off. Huawei started by reselling Hong Kong phone switches. No technology, just distribution. Then they reverse-engineered the switches and built their own. By the 2000s, Huawei was undercutting Western telecom giants on price. By 2010, they were beating them on technology. The company that started reselling other people's equipment became the world leader in 5G infrastructure. When sanctions hit, Ren didn't panic. He'd built the company once from nothing. He was about to do it again. The first step was the operating system. If Google wouldn't license Android, Huawei would build its own. Harmony OS launched in August 2019, 3 months after sanctions hit. It wasn't a fork of Android. It was written from scratch. By 2021, Huawei had migrated 100 million devices to Harmony OS. By 2023, that number hit 700 million. It's now the 3rd largest mobile operating system on Earth after Android and iOS. Critics said Chinese consumers would never accept a phone without Google services. Turns out, if you build the alternative well enough and price it aggressively, they absolutely will. But software was the easy part. The real problem was chips. Building a competitive smartphone processor requires 3 things: design capability, fabrication technology, and extreme ultraviolet lithography machines. Huawei had the design capability. They'd been making their own Kirin chips since 2014. But TSMC did the fabrication, and the lithography machines came from a Dutch company called ASML. The US pressured both to stop working with Huawei. Without those 2 pieces, Huawei couldn't make modern chips, or so everyone thought. Because in August 2023, when analysts tore down the Mate 60 Pro, they found something that shouldn't exist: A Kirin 9000S processor, built on a 7-nanometer process. A 7-nanometer chip is not something you improvise. It requires machines that cost $150 million each, and expertise built over decades. The US had cut Huawei off from both. So how did they do it? The answer is a company called SMIC, Semiconductor Manufacturing International Corporation. SMIC is China's largest chip maker. They're not as advanced as TSMC, but they're close. And unlike TSMC, SMIC wasn't going to follow American orders. SMIC figured out how to push older lithography equipment beyond what anyone thought possible. They used a technique called multi-patterning, where you print the same layer multiple times to achieve finer detail. It's slower, more expensive, and lower yield. But it works, and it got Huawei the chip they needed. The Kirin 9000S isn't as fast as Apple's A17 Pro or Qualcomm's Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. Independent benchmarks put it closer to the performance of chips from 2 years ago. But that doesn't matter. The point isn't that Huawei built the world's fastest chip. The point is that Huawei built a chip at all. The United States spent 4 years and billions of dollars creating a sanctions regime specifically designed to make this impossible. And Huawei did it anyway, with older equipment, with no help from the West. The message to every other company watching was clear. Sanctions aren't permanent death sentences. They're engineering problems, and engineering problems can be solved. But the real innovation in the Mate 60 Pro isn't the chip, it's the satellite communication. The phone has a feature Huawei calls Ling-C communication. It lets you send and receive text messages via satellite anywhere on Earth, even in areas with zero cell coverage. Not emergency SOS messages like the iPhone 14. Full two-way messaging to any phone number. You can also use it to browse a lightweight version of the internet and make voice calls over satellite. Apple's satellite feature only works for emergency services and only in specific countries. Huawei's works everywhere and connects to anyone, and it launched first. Ling-C works through China's Tiantong satellite network. Tiantong is a constellation of geostationary satellites launched by China between 2016 and 2021. They're designed for government, military, and emergency use. Huawei negotiated access and built the antenna and modem technology into the Mate 60 Pro. It's not the first satellite phone. Those have existed for decades. But it's the first mainstream consumer smartphone with satellite capability built in. No external antenna, no separate device, just a phone. Apple announced its satellite feature in September 2022 with the iPhone 14. Huawei's system is more capable and launched a year later. The company that wasn't supposed to survive is now ahead. Apple's version works through Globalstar, an American satellite operator. The service is free for 2 years, then $15 per month after that. It only works for emergency messages to rescue services, and only in North America, Europe, and a handful of other regions. Huawei's version costs around $4 per month and works globally. You can text anyone, you can browse the web, you can make calls. For anyone who hikes, travels to remote areas, or works in regions with poor infrastructure, the Mate 60 Pro just became the most useful phone on Earth. And Apple has no timeline for when it will match the capability. The company that invented the modern smartphone is now playing catch-up to the company America tried to destroy. The Mate 60 Pro isn't just competing with Apple on features. It's beating Apple on price. The base model costs around $900 in China. That's $100 less than the iPhone 15 Pro. For Chinese consumers, it's a flagship phone with better satellite capability, longer battery life, and faster charging, all for less money. And it runs Harmony OS, which means it works seamlessly with Huawei's entire ecosystem. Laptops, tablets, smartwatches, earbuds. Apple built that ecosystem strategy first. Huawei copied it, refined it, and localized it for China. The result is a product stack that competes on every level, and sanctions gave Huawei the motivation to build it all in-house. None of this would have happened without sanctions. Before 2019, Huawei was happy to use Google, Qualcomm, and American suppliers. It was cheaper and faster than building everything themselves. Sanctions forced vertical integration. They forced Huawei to invest in chip design, operating systems, app ecosystems, satellite partnerships, and manufacturing relationships that previously didn't need to exist. The US government's goal was to stop Huawei from becoming a threat. Instead, they created the conditions that turned Huawei into a vertically integrated technology giant with no dependence on the West. Every piece of the Mate 60 Pro, the chip, the OS, the satellite modem, the manufacturing, is now Chinese. Sanctions didn't kill the company. They made it self-sufficient. The lesson isn't lost on other Chinese companies. If Huawei can survive being cut off from Western technology, anyone can. Xiaomi, Oppo, Vivo, and every other Chinese tech company watched what happened. They saw that depending on American suppliers is a strategic vulnerability. They're now investing billions in their own chip design, their own software platforms, and their own supply chains. The smartphone market is fragmenting. 5 years ago, the entire world ran on American chips, American software, and American components. Today, the world's largest market is building its own stack, and it started because the US government tried to kill one company and accidentally taught an entire industry how to survive without the West. Apple is starting to feel it. The company's China revenue dropped 8% in 2023. That's $6 billion in lost sales in 1 year. The iPhone still dominates the premium segment, but Huawei is taking back market share fast. The Mate 60 Pro sold 1.6 million units in its first 6 weeks. The iPhone 15 lineup sold 15% fewer units in China than the iPhone 14 did the year before. For the first time in a decade, Apple is losing ground in the world's largest smartphone market. And it's happening because a company America tried to destroy came back with a better product. The ban on iPhones in Chinese government buildings isn't just symbolic. It's a signal that China is done depending on American technology. The geopolitical implications are enormous. For 20 years, the West assumed technological superiority was permanent. Silicon Valley made the chips, the software, and the standards. Everyone else assembled and consumed. That model is breaking. China is now the only country other than the United States with a full domestic technology stack. Chips, operating systems, apps, cloud services, satellites, everything. They're not just copying, they're innovating. The satellite feature in the Mate 60 Pro is more advanced than what Apple offers. The vertical integration is deeper than Samsung's. And it all happened in 4 years, under the most punishing sanctions regime in modern history. The message is simple. The West no longer has a monopoly on advanced technology. Sanctions are still in place. Huawei still can't buy American chips or software. But it doesn't matter anymore. The company doesn't need them. And that's the nightmare scenario for US policymakers. The entire sanctions strategy was based on the assumption that cutting off access to American technology would cripple Chinese companies. It worked for a while, but it also forced China to build the capability to survive without the West. And now that capability exists, sanctions lose their leverage. You can't threaten to cut off something a country has already learned to make for itself. The US gambled that China couldn't build advanced chips without Western tools. China proved them wrong, and the stakes just got a lot higher. Other industries are watching. If China can build its own chips and operating systems, what else can it do? Electric vehicles, aviation, biotechnology, artificial intelligence. The playbook is the same. Identify Western dependencies, invest heavily in domestic alternatives, subsidize until competitive, then dominate. It's happening in batteries. CATL supplies 37% of the world's EV batteries and doesn't rely on Western technology. It's happening in solar panels. China produces 80% of global supply. It's happening in 5G infrastructure. Huawei and ZTE are the market leaders. And it's happening in semiconductors, faster than anyone expected. The Mate 60 Pro isn't just a phone, it's proof that the strategy works. The West's response so far has been more restrictions. In October 2023, the US tightened export controls on AI chips to China. The goal is to slow China's progress in artificial intelligence by cutting off access to NVIDIA's most advanced GPUs. But the Huawei story suggests that strategy will backfire. Restrictions don't stop development, they redirect it. They force companies to innovate domestically, and once that capability exists, it spreads. Huawei's chip breakthrough benefits every Chinese tech company. SMIC's manufacturing advances benefit the entire semiconductor ecosystem. The US is creating the conditions for China to build a parallel technology stack that doesn't need the West at all. And that stack is getting competitive fast. Apple knows it has a problem. The company is reportedly accelerating its own satellite communication plans. They're investing in manufacturing outside China to reduce dependence on Chinese suppliers. They're developing their own modem chips to replace Qualcomm's. But it's reactive. Apple is responding to moves Huawei already made. The company that defined the smartphone era for 15 years is now playing catch-up. And the reason is simple. Huawei was forced to innovate or die. Apple has been optimizing. There's a difference. One strategy produces incremental improvements. The other produces breakthroughs. And breakthroughs win. The Mate 60 Pro is what happens when a company has no choice but to build the future. The Mate 60 Pro is just the beginning. Huawei is already working on the next generation. The Mate 70 series is expected in 2024 with a 5-nanometer chip, another node the US said China couldn't reach. There are reports of a foldable phone with satellite capability. And Huawei isn't stopping at phones. They're building cars. The company partnered with automakers to develop electric vehicles with Harmony OS built in. The first models launched in 2023. They're selling well. Huawei is applying the same vertical integration strategy to the automotive industry that they used in smartphones. And the West is starting to notice. Because if Huawei can beat Apple in phones, what happens when they come for Tesla? The automotive move is strategic. Cars are becoming smartphones on wheels. The value is shifting from hardware to software, from engines to operating systems. Whoever controls the OS controls the customer relationship, the data, the app ecosystem, and the upgrade cycle. Apple knows this. They've been working on a car for a decade. Tesla knows this. They treat cars like software platforms. Huawei knows it too. And unlike Apple, Huawei already has the OS, the chip design capability, the manufacturing relationships, and the government support to move fast. They're not building a Huawei-branded car. They're building the technology stack that powers everyone else's cars. It's the Android strategy applied to vehicles. And it's happening now. The pattern is clear. Sanctions don't stop China. They accelerate independence. Every restriction forces investment in domestic alternatives. And those alternatives are getting competitive. The US bet that technological dominance would last forever. That bet is failing. The world is splitting into two technology ecosystems. One centered on Silicon Valley, one centered on Shenzhen. And the Chinese ecosystem is growing faster. The Mate 60 Pro is the proof. A phone that wasn't supposed to exist. Built by a company that was supposed to be dead. With a chip the West said China couldn't make. And a feature Apple still doesn't have. This isn't about one phone. This is about the future of technology. And the future just got a lot more competitive. The farmer's son, who started with $3,000 and got laughed at, just built a phone with satellite calling that Apple can't match. The company the United States tried to kill came back stronger. With its own chips, its own operating system, its own satellite network. And it's only getting started. The sanctions that were supposed to cripple Huawei instead forced it to become self-sufficient. And now that capability exists, it spreads. China just proved it can compete at the highest level of technology, without Western chips, without Western software, without Western permission. The future of smartphones wasn't decided in Cupertino, it was decided in Shenzhen. And the West is only starting to realize what that means. Subscribe and turn on notifications. The next story out of China involves something even bigger than phones. Would you switch from an iPhone to a Mate 60 Pro for satellite messaging? Drop your answer below. I read every single comment. The world's technology landscape just shifted, and most people won't realize it until it's too late. Don't be one of them.